Sir, can you tell us a little bit what was the idea of Creles when you first started it?
Okay, Creles was more interested in studying healthy aging in the whole country, in the whole Costa Rica, and the interest came from data that showed that in general Costa Rica have outstanding levels of health and life expectancy, especially at older ages.
Okay.
So we knew that beforehand. So we applied for funding to Wellcome Trust in England, and they provided the funding to conduct Creles. And the purpose of Creles was to understand why Costa Ricans are doing well. As part of Creles, or at the same time, this Nicoya exceptional region show up. So we take advantage that Creles was going on to make some studies also about Nicoya.
So Nicoya showed up during Creles. It was not known. It was not a well-known fact before Creles.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how did you know beforehand that the healthy aging of Costa Rican was above the rest of the world?
Yeah, those were studies, I would say since the 90s I was conducting.
Okay.
And I gave several conferences, attended to population conference and so on.
Okay.
And even though people knew that in general life expectancy in Costa Rica was very high, higher even in the United States, but very few people knew that the advantage in Costa Rica was especially at older ages.
Okay.
If you look at just say infant mortality rate, it's okay in Costa Rica, but it's not exceptional.
Okay.
But if you look at the mortality rates at older ages, are really exceptional. Yeah. Okay. And the first thing about that is that there used to be a lot of skepticism about this exceptionality, and the argument against that is that usually problems with information about age, people ages in surveys and census are not good. That some older people tend to exaggerate ages, and that reduce the mortality rates that one calculates and can reach wrong conclusions. So a key thing in these studies were to have good data, well documented, well documented data, valid data about the ages of the people, and we had that in Costa Rica.
You have that in Costa Rica.
And that was the opportunity to study and find that Costa Ricans live longer.
Just before coming here, we were in Vilcabamba in Ecuador, and they have the same that problem to prove with accurate data.
I spent there like 6 months in 2011.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, the big problem with Vilcabamba is that the population is too small. Right. There are only 5,000 people in Vilcabamba.
Yeah. So
they have only 2 or 3 centenarians. That was in 2011.
We've been told, from the presidente da Junta Parroquial, there's around 10. 10 now. So
well, at that time were 2 or 3, and with those small numbers, it's very difficult to reach conclusions because you need big numbers to have statistical power to reach conclusions.
They're currently doing a census, which will be ready in April, so maybe we'll have more information after that.
But they always are going to have this problem because Vilcabamba is too small.
But sir, what is the minimum population you need to reach conclusion as a demographist?
Well, it's hard to tell, but just guessing, I would say at least 50,000 people, something like that.
You need a sample of 50,000 people at least.
Yeah, the count of the population, 50,000. So you would have about a few thousands people in old ages, say over 60, and then you can study that population.
Okay.
But if you have only a few hundred elderly people, it's very difficult.
It's very difficult.
There are lots of noise in the data. So.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. And can you tell us about the conclusion you've reached of all, because you had 3 waves, if I'm right, about the Krellis, right?
Yeah.
So what could you tell the public about the main conclusion you could reach after these 3 waves of Krellis?
Well, there are several.
What's important to you?
Yeah, it's multidimensional study, so there are several.
Yeah. Obviously, it's very complicated.
Yeah, in my view, one of the main conclusions was that one of the reasons, or perhaps the main reason, why Costa Rica is doing so well is because there are almost no inequality in the mortality rates or life expectancy by socioeconomic states. In other populations, you found a gradient. People of higher socioeconomic status live longer, and sometimes the differences are huge, several years. In Costa Rica and also Nicoya, you almost not observe that. The curves by socioeconomic status is almost flat. So that's a key thing about Costa Rica.
But how can we explain that? So it means what you're saying, if I put in other words, if people who earn more money, they don't necessarily live longer. People who have more better standard of living don't necessarily live longer. It's actually what we've seen last week with people like Dora or Trinity who obviously have less money. They live more simpler life than, for example, Donna Luz, but they have the same age. So how can we explain that? Because we in Europe, for example, people think like if they have more money, they can have more comfort. And they can pay more doctors and go to private clinics.
Have access to high-level medicine and so on and so forth. And we have an article we published in one of the best journals in the world, the PNAS, the Journal of the National Academy of Science, comparing Costa Rica with the United States. And if you are, say, a professional, highly educated, high income, you probably are better off in the US than here. No, probably, that's what the data show. But if you are poor, you are substantially better here in Costa Rica than in the United States.
Okay.
Yeah.
You also made a study about the Amerindians, so the people who had
that's a small one,
blood related with the Amerindians. How was it to you, understanding that it added some effect on the longevity?
Yeah, that was just a pilot study with very few DNA samples, and we are finding some, I wouldn't say evidence, but some hints that maybe part of the advantage of Nicoyans is its
genetics,
their Amerindian ancestry.
Okay.
How do we reach that conclusion? If you compare the centenarians with the younger people inside Nicoya and outside Nicoya, the grupos, in the centenarians of Nicoya are a substantially higher, a significantly higher proportion of people with Amerindia ancestry,
DNA.
According to DNA.
Okay.
Yeah. So that could be because other causes like migrations or things like that, and this study have to be expanded with a larger sample and probably with a follow-up, a longitudinal study, but it gives a hint that maybe in ancestry there is some of the explanations why Nicoyans are doing so well.
Okay. Okay. With demographic, with your field, you can say, for example, that people simple and people who are poor in Costa Rica, they live as long as people who are more wealthy, but we cannot reach conclusion on why, because it's nothing to do with social security here, or there's a link with the way the government is taking care of the people here.
Yeah,
or,
we can speculate, and there are some reasonable speculations one can do. One is that the equalitarian access to basic healthcare people have in Costa Rica, thanks to the primary healthcare system, the EVICE, probably you know. So that could be a factor. That system take care of very basic things like hygiene, hypertension control, things like that, and provides basic health education. So that may be important.
Okay.
But probably there are other factors also. Perhaps an explanation is that this may be a temporary situation, that all the changes that are occurring in the world, there are some positive and some negatives. And to these people, the older people in Nicoya, the positive changes that have occurred, for instance, better control of infectious diseases, things like that, antibiotics and things like that keep them alive, have been favorable. And they have plenty access to that. But they have not been reached by the bad things that are going on. I mean, sedentarism, diet, you know, that type of thing. So, in some way, the lifestyle, the traditional lifestyle, that is one of the factors that keep them healthy.
So in Berkeley?
Yeah, I was there like 4 years, then my health problems came and I decided to come back to Costa Rica.
Can you tell us about if CRELES involve cross studies, or if you have done in your life cross studies with longevity with other countries than Costa Rica, to be able to compare?
Well, with CRELES and also in general, we have a few other studies. One, as I remember, is a comparison we did with Spain and England about the family support to elderly people and the relation with family, and it was very clear that in Costa Rica the family was much more important than Spain and England. In Spain is more important than in England. And how we did that with indicators like how many times per week you see your children, things like that. Here in Costa Rica, older people see the family all the time, or live together.
We could see that last week. It was really nice. It was really chill.
Is friendship also something important for the families of centenarians or any other Costa Ricans?
Friendship. Well, I don't have numbers about that, and hard to tell from me.
You know, I think what Susanna is also saying is, for example, in Japan, where we are going afterwards, the mohai, the group of friends, the support group, that that people could see each other and share things. Like, for example, in Vilcabamba, they organize, even though it's as you said, it's very complicated to study because it's a very small sample, but they have el Centro de los Adultos Mayores, donde las personas se encuentran todos los días para hacer cosas. Do you think it's something like there's equivalent things
Well, there is a thing in Costa Rica, but this is more anecdotic.
Okay.
I don't have the data
Okay.
but the thing about Costa Rica is that in the small towns, the sense of community is very strong. And small towns work very well, crime is very low, for instance, and people have a community life, collaborate with each other. And life is completely different here in the metropolitan area. Yeah, but small towns are probably the best thing in Costa Rica. And if you were in Nicoya, for instance, in Ojancha, in those small towns,
been there, that's true.
I remember when the first time I went there and met our famous old people, our abuela Panchita. Panchita. Yeah, I remember she used to live alone, but the whole community used to be taking care of her.
So it was not only the family.
Yeah, they were visiting. Young people went to help her in her small house.
Super nice,
like that. Yeah. So the village was
around her, supporting her.
Yeah. So that exists in small towns in Costa Rica, small villages.
Can you tell us, sir, your relationship with the word blue zone, and why? Because I mean, the studies you've done was before the blue zone term appeared and revealed and showed the world that Nicoya was an exceptional longevity place, but the studies have been done before that. And so what is for you the link between Creles and blue zone? And because people, they don't know in Europe the difference, what is it?
Yeah.
Zone bleue in French, we say.
The story of the blue zone is as follows. I presented in a conference in France in 2005. These results were not yet Creles results. The results I was talking you about, showing that elderly Costa Ricans live longer and probably they are one of the population with the higher life expectancies in the world at all ages. And after my conference, which was taken with lots of skepticism by most of the demographers there, Michel Poulain come to me and asked me, is there in Costa Rica a place where the situation is even better than this good situation in Costa Rica? And it happened that I was just finishing a geographic special study addressing that question, and I have found that yes, exactly in the 5 cantons of the Nicoya Peninsula, there was a significantly higher life expectancy or lower probabilities of dying. There was also another small exceptional zone toward the Panama frontier, but we have a problem there, like in Vilcabamba, that's only 5,000 people, and we have not been able to study indeed. But I told Michel about that. He got interested, and he already had this term of blue zones and so on and so forth. And he talked to these journalists from National Geographic, Bürner, and they came in the year 2007, I think, and I took them to Nicoya. They, especially Michel, who's a demographer, was very careful on checking that this was not an artifact or age exaggeration, that the data were good, and basically he gave the seal that
so it was a kind of verifying all the work which was already done.
Yeah. They have at that time 3 blue zones, and then decided to add Costa Rica as a for blue zone. They gave this adjective that have brought good and not so good things to this exceptional zone.
Not so good things in terms of because of the publicity of the tourists.
The commercialization, a lot of people are using now that to make a business. A lot of people are selling smoke, basically.
Yeah. What are the? Do you know the criterias that they use? The criterias that make sense to you to say that it's a longevity hotspot, like you have in Costa Rica, so in Nicoya or next to the border with Panama, even if it's a small sample. Like you were saying that there's a higher concentration of old age, but what is old age? Is above 80, 90, and when you say lower mortality, is lower mortality compared to what? In a range of ages, or?
Yeah, in our case in Costa Rica, we use epidemiological methods that are used to discover hot spots or so of high rates of cancer, for instance. And it is complicated that it studies all the data all over the country, and the method makes thousands or millions of simulations until find out if there is a circle or square or whatever with significantly higher or lower whatever. We were looking for mortality rates after the age of 80.
Okay.
And the circle of Nicoya emerged strongly. They have around 20% lower mortality rates at ages over 80.
After 80 years old. Okay.
Yeah, and that's it for this study. After that, one start to doing more in-depth study to see the life expectancy, things like that. But in general, what's special about this area in Costa Rica is this about 20% lower mortality rate at older ages, after age 80.
And to be significant, sir, 20% in demography is a minimum rate, or not necessarily?
Not necessarily. Depends of the size of the sample. If the sample is very small, you perhaps need a larger difference
to make an impact. Okay.
But in this case, with the sample we have in Nicoya, we have 160,000 people.
160,000 people in Nicoya. In the 5 cantons or in the 11 one?
In the 5
one. Okay.
Yeah. And that was statistically significant.
Okay.
Clearly statistically significant.
Okay.
And then we started doing some additional studies. We found out that the advantage is concentrated especially in men, that women are not special in this regard, and the advantage is especially in cardiovascular mortality.
Which is interesting, because usually the lifespan is higher with women than male.
Yeah. Actually, that's still true in Nicoya, but the difference between males and females is very small. It's almost non-existent in Nicoya. So what I'm saying is that women in Nicoya are like women, say, in the United States. But men in Nicoya are exceptional. But that doesn't mean that they are doing better than women.
Okay. Understood. Understood. Understood.
Now, on another note, did you happen to make any studies regarding health practices like exercise, dance, movement practices?
Not really. That's one of the areas that we really don't have good data. In Clayles we have a couple of questions, and that's not enough. And yes, these small pieces of information show that sedentarism is lower in Nicoya, especially among men, and you can see that clearly in the hard data we have on obesity, body mass index, especially for men. Obesity is almost non-existent in older people in Nicoya, but we don't have good data on physical activity. And in diet, which is the other thing that usually people are very interested in, we have some data, but it's not the best possible data. I think a good study of diet has to be done still.
And you think these two studies will be done and supported by the University of Costa Rica, or you think there's nutritionists or
I don't know.
rehab doctors and physiotherapists?
I don't know. Everything depends of some researcher well qualified and interested in doing it.
Okay.
So having that research will start looking for funding and things like that. But probably these things do not come out from above. I mean, the university cannot decide we have to do that and we are going to do. If there is no the research,
it has to come from a passion, from a professor, from a researcher. Okay.
Exactly.
Can you tell us in how many centenarians you have in Costa Rica, and how many people above 90 years old are in the? Because Jorge told us it was significant. Like I think he told us 708 centenarians.
We are in that number. Probably he's right. Yeah. And when I start doing this, there used to be like 300 centenarians all over Costa Rica. In Nicoya, 30 or so. That number varies a lot because they are entering and leaving.
Yes.
You know. But the latest number I don't have it.
But I think it was, if I remember properly, I think it was 153 centenarians in Nicoya, but it was like above 6,000 people above 90 years old, which was huge.
Yeah, it could be. It could be. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if I can confirm that.
Okay. Okay. Do you have any? I wanted to ask also.
So about since you mentioned the food item, from what you could understand from your studies, which were the main ingredients for the diet?
Okay, we in Creles had a small questionnaire about food consumption with about 30 food items we selected to research, and what we found is basically that there is not one of those
Mediterranean diet.
Those diets going on in Nicoya, no Mediterranean diet or no low protein diet or low fat. No. The uniqueness of Nicoya perhaps is that it's a traditional diet, you know, very little consumption of food outside the home.
No processed food. I mean, at the time that was
very little processed food. They eat normal quantities of meat, pork meat, things like that. One interesting thing is that they drink lower quantities of milk than in the rest of Costa Rica, and that's significant. That difference is significant. And
they eat cheese.
Pardon?
They eat cheese.
Queso. Cheese.
There is no significant difference in cheese, but in drinking milk, yes. They drink less milk.
Alcohol consumption, tobacco.
No big difference. No big difference. And when one computes the consumption of nutrients, it is clear that Nicoyans have a higher consumption of high fiber food. Then they consume a lot of beans, rice, like in the rest of Costa Rica. In a study we are trying to publish in just on these days, we found that there is a relationship between the consumption of beans, usually black beans is what in Costa Rica people consume, and length of telomeres.
Okay.
So it looks like people, the high consumption of black beans are associated with longer telomeres, which is a good thing.
We can find that study has been published?
Not yet, we are trying to publish
that.
And we probably get that because of recent studies that have shown that there are some relationship between some kinds of food and length of telomeres. Yeah. There is a recent study, I think it's in the US, showing that high-fat milk consumption
shorten the
telomeres. Okay. I saw that in the press recently.
Okay.
So you will see probably in the next few weeks that
study coming out.
Yeah.
It's very nice.
Yeah.
Could you identify with all the work you have done all these years a specific or a couple of specific habits that people have in Nicoya or not, because it's not related in what you do or what you in a sense is telling you?
Lifestyles. One thing, and the data also show a little bit of significant association in that direction, is that having a lot of family support may be a factor. We know, for instance, that, again, telomeres, that people who live alone, for instance, have shorter telomeres. And so the family support, the family life is one of these lifestyles. But other than that, I know that some people talk about religion, things like that, but I have seen the data to prove it. Yeah.
Religion, fasting, or the sleep habits, or these kind of things. Fasting, nothing. Sleep habits.
As far as I don't know. Yeah. As far as I know, no.
About sleep, circadian rhythm, or
we don't have data about that, and that was a mistake in Creles. We didn't include questions about.
Because what we've seen, I mean, obviously it's very, very, like talking to 10 families, like they seem to all sleep and respect the sun cycles. They go to sleep very early, they wake up super early, which is totally different that the lifestyle people have in big cities. Like they stay up super late.
Yeah, that is true in rural areas in general.
True. And last question, sir, have you done other studies or in other part of the world, or only in Costa Rica? Because we talk about Vilcabamba, where you spent 6 months, but we've heard also about Cuba, about Abkhazia in Georgia. We've heard about the Unzas in North Pakistan and Bama Valley in China, which also seem to be hotspot of longevity, but maybe, like you were saying, Vilcabamba, too small to be studied. What do you know about these other spots?
No, I don't know nothing about that. Not looking to hot spots, but looking in more general terms. One thing that I have found is that, in general, in tropical Latin America, the levels of mortality at all ages are lower than what one could expect.
Okay. In Central and Latin America?
Tropical Latin America.
Okay.
That means that Argentina, Chile, Uruguay are not part of this pattern. But if one takes Cuba, Colombia, Venezuela, Central America, the mortality rates of older people or old adults are substantially lower than what one can expect. I published something using data just from Mexico and Costa Rica to check this general observation, and yes, in both in Mexico and Costa Rica, indeed, mortality is lower than what is expected.
Okay.
It's not an artifact of that data. So it seems there is something about tropical Latin America that make.
So the environment, you're saying, the atmosphere, or the
Could be.
or the genes, as we're saying, Susanna, and you were talking about like the indigenous genes, because it's been brought up to the public that epigenetic plays a role of 80% and genetics plays a role of 20%. But as we couldn't really identify specific habits, for example, like diets of the people in Nicoya, talking about the people of Nicoya, genetics seems to play an important role of...
Yeah. A suspicion, a strong suspicion I have is that one thing in common about these tropical areas was malaria in the past. So there are some genes that the carriers of those mutations survive better malaria, and when they reach old age, they are also more resistant to cardiovascular diseases.
Because the genes have been triggers by malaria when they were younger. That's what you're saying, or did I get it right, or?
Well, that perhaps malaria kill people with bad genes, also for cardiovascular.
Okay.
It's
So
a kind of selection.
The selection of immunity.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
That I think could be part of the explanation of why
I see.
these
Very
people in tropical areas are doing so well.
Very
And
interesting.
they are doing well in cardiovascular diseases. Yeah.
Yeah. Very interesting. And there's a study also. Are you doing a study on that, or there's a?
I did that more, and I
Small.
published using data from Mexico and Costa Rica.
Okay. Fantastic.
But I started showing that there is something special about Latin America, and more studies are needed. Yeah, that's one thing. The other thing about genes. So I am not saying that everything is because genes. An interesting information we found with Costa Rican data and Nicoya data is that people in Nicoya, born in Nicoya, who migrates outside of Nicoya, all over Costa Rica, they lose their advantage.
Okay.
If it were just genes, they should keep the advantage. Yeah? And by the same token, the people who migrates to Nicoya, who were not born in Nicoya, don't have that big advantage. The advantage is only for the people born and who continue living and stay in Nicoya.
So people coming outside of Nicoya and finishing their life or living only 40 years in Nicoya, they don't have advantage.
Yeah, forget it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's interesting. So my conclusion with this data, which is a significant data, is that probably is an interaction of the environment and genes.
Could geology,
could be, yeah, that's part of the
volcanic
environment.
activity has something to do with it?
Electromagnetism, for example?
Could be. There are some interesting studies about the water in Nicoya, the minerals of water in Nicoya. The water in Nicoya is different than in the rest of Costa Rica.
Because of magnesium, selenium, or?
Calcium, for instance, has lots of calcium, water in Nicoya. And yes, you don't see almost fractures of the hip fractures at relation in Nicoya.
You don't see it, and
you
yet they're very active, so something could happen.
Even though they don't drink milk.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. Do you agree with the 20% genetics, 80% epigenetics, or for you it's because it's hard to I don't know how the scientists came up with that with these numbers.
Yeah,
they say like on longevity 80% is because of epigenetics, and 20% genetics plays a role of 20% only. But I don't know how they came up with that percentage.
Yeah, I don't know either. Yeah.
Okay, because what you were saying is, as people who were born in Nicoya and who migrate outside of Nicoya, they lose their advantage. So it means there's no genetics is not involved. And people, on the other hand, who are not born in Nicoya but coming to Nicoya to live, they don't get advantage. So it means epigenetic doesn't play a role as well. So it's very hard. You as a scientist, as a demographist, the best thing you can say is it's the interaction of both.
Yeah.
But just to give a percentage, it's
hard.
It's hard.
With the Nicoya data, it's very hard. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. A promising line of study that we are developing this year with collaboration of people in Stanford is studying this methylation of genes in the samples of Nicoya and Costa Rica in general. So we are getting into epigenetics. We already found that telomeres are longer in Nicoya, and now we are going to study methylation to find out that if there is some specific genes in which methylation is different in Nicoya. Perhaps that way we could be able to find something.
And do you know if studies have been done with the microbiome of Nicoyan people? Because we know that 70% of our immunity is also in our gut. Do you know if...
A study is going on.
Okay.
Yeah. Here
with Stanford as well? With Stanford University?
I don't know. I don't think so. I am not in that project.
Okay.
I think it's a local project.
It's a local project. Okay.
And they are even doing some experimental things, giving some foods to
try
measure.
Yeah. Because we know that Jorge told us that his daughter is a nutritionist and does some study also with the university.
Yeah, and that study is going on. Just started, so and it's interesting also, and we need more studies like that. Yeah.
Okay. And were you involved at some point with Cuba? Because we're hearing also there's a lot of there's a probable hotspot in Cuba also, which is very close to Costa Rica.
Not really. Several people ask me, like you, if I could tell of another hotspot, and I told them maybe Cuba. Yeah, because just anecdotal experience and couple of visits of Cuba, and also by looking at the Buena Vista Social Club of musicians, things like that. You see extraordinary people at very old age in Cuba,
That's true.
And one suspects that perhaps something is there. Okay. And also there is this small connection between Nicoya and Cuba. I don't know if you heard about that.
No.
Yeah. During the revolution or the independence war in Cuba, some patriots were expelled from Cuba, and they established in Nicoya.
Okay.
Panchita is a descendant from Cuba.
That's true.
So there is a connection
That's true.
between a small part of Nicoya and Cuba. So.
Right. Okay, super. Thank you very much, sir. And just, you've heard about Bama Valley in China, obviously the Unzas and Abkhazia, other in Georgia?
Well, the Georgia thing I've heard, and it seems it's not well documented. That was the problem of Vilcabamba also in the 70s.
Yeah,
that
with Dr. Leaf.
It was not documented, the age of the people. But around 1970, the government in Ecuador started providing documents, identification, and so on and so forth, and the super centenarians disappeared after that, you know, because there was a lot of age exaggeration.
And so you went in early 90s because you wanted to do a study there, or?
Yes, well, no, that was in 2011.
2011, sorry,
Yeah.
okay.
The government there had a program, it was called the Prometeo program, to bring researchers from other places.
Okay.
So I applied specifically to study. I am originally from Ecuador.
Oh.
So, yeah.
And qué parte?
So, the Quito.
De Quito, okay.
Yeah. So I was interested in doing some work in Ecuador and took advantage of that program, and they accepted my proposition and went to an institute they established there.
Well, we've seen it, but now it's closed. It's next to on the way to
crossing the river.
What's Wilco?
Rumi
Wilco. On the way, yeah,
and yes, it was not a good experience.
Okay.
Yeah, because I thought that there was a more serious effort to do real research in that institute, but there was nothing. There was the building, computers, some people hired because they were politically connected with the party in the government. Very humble people that they didn't know about research. Yeah, so it was kind of frustrating.
And we've heard, just to finish in Vilcabamba, that the most ancient datas, like the birth certificate and the baptism certificate, the oldest one were from the 1860s. Is it?
I don't know.
They couldn't document before that. So.
I don't know. The thing is that the government in Ecuador made a kind of special program to document people in Vilcabamba, provide the cédula, and that was in the 70s. And after that, people are keeping their ages right. And after that, the data that you can see from census are okay.
Up to the 70s, but
the 1970s.
That means whoever was born 1970 doesn't have the right record to prove the age.
And it is possible that at that time some people exaggerated the age that appeared in the cédula, but that people have already died, and as these people become older, they have at least now this documentation. So nowadays it's possible to document, and that's why you find only very few centenarians.
So it means that if someone was validated to be 60 years old when he was in 1970, it's official. And now we can say, okay, he has 50 years more, he's 120. Because it was
the centenarians nowadays were like 60 years old in the 70s, and they had a
certificate,
a cédula at that age. And at that age, at 60, people don't exaggerate the ages yet. So it's believable.
Because we've seen the study of Richard Masnes and Foreman, who were actually in the, I think it was in the 80s, when Dr. Leaf brought to the world the study about Vilcabamba. Two American researchers proved that actually the oldest person he was an artifact, and the oldest person.
That was in the 80s.
Yeah, Masnes and Foreman.
So probably I have the dates wrong. Maybe it was in the 90s when the when the government maybe.
But the interesting thing, for example, we've met Don Jose Javier, and he's 110 in February, and he has the government gave him a certificate when he reached 100 years old. So he has a certificate. So maybe it's also linked to what you're saying us, like he has a plate in his house saying like.
Yeah.
Some for the city mayor and some government officials saying that he's actually reached 100 years old 10 years ago.
But what I found that very few people in Vilcabamba were able to show up a real birth certificate or baptism certificate.
We also learned that most people so people could check on people's age regarding the date of marriage, because that is usually in the church, and also the age of the first child, because people could remember how old they were when they had their first child or after they're married.
Yeah, that's how demographers do some additional checks to
confirm.
To be sure that they are not exaggerating age. Michel Poulain is a specialist on that.
On cross-checking.
Yeah, and that's what he did when he came here in 2007, to provide the seal that data here are okay. Yeah.
Because Jorge told us, for example, a passport can be falsified and displayed. It has to be confirmed on all papers, all the where the birth date was written with other people in all scriptures, all records.
Yeah.
So for you as a demographist, it's important that these big books are being checked.
And we have done that.
Okay.
In addition, we know from the cédula, the number in the cédula, because that number is linked with the number of the book where the birth was recorded. Is very difficult, depending on this number, for people to falsify the ages. It's complicated to explain, but we can do some additional controls just looking at the numbers in the cédula.
Thank you very much, sir. Do you want to share a last thing with the world? There's a message you want to pass? Specific things about all the work you've done. It's a lifetime work, obviously, as a demographer.
I say that looking at these hotspots of longevity is important because it can provide us some hints of how to improve life expectancy. But people shouldn't expect to get a silver bullet in this population that say eating nuts is the factor that make people live longer, or drinking such and such thing. So don't expect that. Probably it's a confluence of lots of different factors, and be skeptical about the simplistic explanations about this.
Okay. And last thing, what was a lifetime of work with longevity? What kind of personal impact it had on your life? Did it had an impact, or did it modify the way you lived your life at some point? Some decision making you had to do, or
not really?
Not really. Okay.
Not really. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much, sir. Muchas gracias.
Thank you for your time.
Muchas gracias. You mind saying us that? So, what about the people in Nicoya in relation with medication in the old age?
Yeah, we found in the CRELES data that the proportion of people taking pills to reduce hypertension or cholesterol is almost nil among the Nicoyans, compared to 50% or numbers like that in the rest of Costa Rica for people at all ages. So that's imparted because they have a metabolic advantage. Also, the proportion of people with hypertension is low, so they don't receive the prescriptions.
So we can say that elderly in Nicoya, they're healthy compared. I mean, they're not just old and surviving with medication. They're healthy people.
Oh yeah, and in the cardiovascular health, in metabolic health, they definitely have an advantage.
So when they get sick, what kind of medicine do they do if they don't take the pills?
I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah, if they get sick, they probably will get these pills.
Okay.
And what about cancer? Did you do some studies with cancer and Nicoyans?
Yeah, we compare the rates with the rest of Costa Rica, and there are not a large difference.
Okay.
But one of the problems of Costa Rica is the very high rates of stomach cancer. But that is concentrated in very specific areas, in Cartago, Pérez Celedón. Nicoya, no. Nicoya don't have these very high rates of stomach cancer that affects the rest of.
So same with the interaction of genes and epigenetics, probably. It's hard to draw conclusions.
Nobody knows why
nobody knows.
Stomach cancer is so high in Costa Rica, and why it's coming down, because it's coming down very quickly in the last few years.
And one last thing, do we know, like centenarians, they're elderly people in Nicoya, they're dying out of what sort of disease? If they have a very good cardiovascular health condition, they're dying out of what? Because dying out of old age, what does it mean? Is it a heart, the heart is stopping, they have a heart attack, or what kind of, they're dying out of something?
Yeah, well, mostly cardiovascular diseases, cancer, but
heart failure.
Yeah, cardiovascular, heart failure and
brain stroke.
Yeah, brain stroke, but at lower rates than in the rest of the country.
Okay.
In this area.
Okay.
In vascular diseases.
Okay.
Cancer and yes, pneumonias when you get an infection at very old age. You have very high risk, and sometimes you die because of that.
So the myth also of people saying they just die in their sleep of old age, true, but they still die out of a disease, of brain stroke or heart failure or pneumonia. They still.
At very old ages, it's very difficult to establish a cause of death. You know, sometimes there is a
mix.
There is a mix. Everything starts failing at some point, and
Okay, so very old age, it's very difficult to have a specific diagnostic. Yeah. All right. Thank you very much, sir. We really appreciate it.